What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video. And today we are once again looking at CBS's brand new 2024 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Do that fun YouTube jazz. Below my face is my board. Below that are all the amazing ways you can get connected even more with the community, as well as take advantage of the special perks of the show. Let's jump right into this. We are on the way to 10K. If you're in the mood to jump about 1.5 years in the future, I just dropped a 2025 way too early mock draft, my first one as of yesterday. So feel free to go check that out. Put about 9 hours into being able to make those slides. So feel free to enjoy the visuals that are not usually on these mock drafts. But Josh Edwards has been pretty much doing these every single week. So we actually have a much higher level of expectation for these mock drafts. Also, it looks like y'all really do enjoy looking at these with me. So it is going to continue being one of the mainstays of the show. Also, if I end up seeing something super cool come across, especially from other organizations, I'll absolutely look at it. But for the most part, I haven't really seen anything too intriguing on many other sites. So let's check this out. This is going to be a live reaction. Again, Josh Edwards has been doing this very consistently, so I'm very excited to see how his opinion is changing and how his draft is evolving with the new orders. So let's get right into this. Starting out with the number one overall selection, we have the Bears taking Caleb Williams. So Caleb obviously is probably the best prospect in the class, one of the better prospects of all time. I know that there's a lot of negativity against him, and understandably so. You know, he has a temperament, doesn't have the buttoned up look of a normal franchise quarterback that maybe some people have in their mind. For me, I do have some issues with his just overall emotional stability. However, I haven't seen that become an issue on the field with his teammates. So I would be willing to put that aside any day of the week. It's a concern that you have to address, but and to me, it's not a big concern. So, you know, the Bears could always use an upgrade. The Bears are actually, I think they're going to be playing right now or in a little bit. But for me, you know, we have to see how Justin Fields finishes off the year. The current draft order, you know, if Justin Fields doesn't continue to improve, this is probably a $200 million saving pick. You want to save $200 million, potentially get a better quarterback, then I think that would be worth it. And I would debate, especially I got to watch how Justin plays today for tomorrow's mock draft, whether I would be going after Caleb Williams at 1 again or after the next pick. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to say the least. Then we got Marvin Harrison Jr. here to the Cardinals. Obviously, a lot of Bears fans would want Marvin to the Bears themselves. I totally agree with that sentiment. However, Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up here as a Cardinal, and I called that a big W because it's a massive need with a massive value at a position of massive value. So you get pretty much the trifecta there. Then you got Drake May here to the Patriots. Again, it's a pretty standard top 3. You know that, especially given trades, this is probably going to be the top 3 guys that go off the board. Drake May, I still don't think he is as far along as a lot of people are trying to say he is. You know, there's still putting up multiple interception games here and there. And, you know, he's not as polished as I think people want to give him credit for. But you can definitely see if he goes to the right system, he could totally end up being well worth the number 3 overall pick. He's more of a post-draft evaluation than I think people are giving credit for. Same thing to Caleb Williams. But if he goes to New England, I do think it's going to be a massive upgrade. I think the defense is good enough to where it gives Drake the leeway to, you know, make those mistakes and take time to develop and still be able to win. So it's a good spot for him to go. I'm excited to see if he ends up going there. At pick number 4, the Bears go with Olu Fashanu. You know, for me, deep down, I'd be willing to go Marvin 1 and then potentially Drake May number 4. If you're really gunning for a quarterback, you know, get the best player, arguably at the wide receiver position that you could find in the past 5 to 10 years, and then still get a top tier quarterback that you will have time to develop. Again, that's if you're set on a quarterback. If you're not, still go Maserati Marv number 1, and then you could be in the mood for Olu Fashanu here at pick 4. I know there's no trades in this, or I assume there's no trades in this, would be, you know, I think this is a fine pick given the spot you're at, but I would be more so in the mood to trade back if there were trades. Continuing on, you got the Giants going Dallas Turner. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Dallas Turner. He has been my number one edge rusher since the beginning. He's continued to be so. And even this past week, he put up 10 pressures. Like 10 pressures in one game. That's just ridiculous. I mean, obviously, there's guys like Braylon Trice who have put up 16. Like all of these edge rushers have had those games. But, for me, ending off the year on such a high note is so critical for someone like Dallas Turner, who has the smallest size of the top edge rushers. It's good to see. It's good to see. So happy for Dallas. I personally think the New York Giants should be in the market for an edge rusher, but not at pick number 5. I would be going Bo Nix here. He's been super consistent all year long, playing against top tier defenses. Oh, he checks down. Okay, he makes good decisions. He is winning he's won almost every single game. The one game he didn't win was versus Washington, where it came down to the wire. But all of a sudden, Michael Penix is a god. Like, come on. And then people try to talk about his age. He's 23 years old. Okay, well, you wouldn't have taken Joe Burrow number 1 then? Hate to say it, but there's a lot of BS arguments. If you have legitimate reasons, and if you have an offensive system that relies heavily on big plays, maybe you wouldn't want someone who's as good of a game manager as Bo Nix, or you don't really want someone who's a game manager because that's essentially what your offense has been running. Then you have at least a little bit of an argument there. But the hate for Bo Nix is ridiculous. I think he would be perfectly fine at pick number 5, and most likely will end up being that tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see how the Bears quarterback situation looks. But Dallas Turner is amazing. He would pair up well with KT. I would just prefer a defensive end or an edge rusher with a little bit more size to pair up with KT. It's a little bit thin there on the edge, but if that pick were to happen, I would still probably give it a B+. It just depends on how the rest of the draft goes before, obviously you look at round 1, you're like, okay, it's B+ for round 1. But if they end up addressing their needs very well with their other picks, then it's a lot better. You get what I'm saying. Then you got the Titans going Joe Alt. A+ move, one that I would make myself. I think Will Levis is the future, even though he is not statistically doing incredibly since like that first game. I still think he has so much potential. There's this QB coach on Instagram that is working with Will Levis. There's a ton of videos with him too. So it's good to see that, Will Levis is even seeking external help to the team to continue to improve. I've become a huge believer in Will Levis. To be fair, I'm a little bit biased because as, a standard dude who wants to at least look good, I want my actual body composition that I'm going for is Will Levis. So a little bit biased there, but it is what it is. And if you're a guy who hits the gym and does not want to look like Will Levis, I don't see the reason why. Because naturally, I don't want to look overly large. But that's a conversation for another day. This is a mock draft here. But yes, Joe Alt's a great pick. Bottom line, it's the best pick you could probably make at that spot. You got Brock Bowers here at pick number 7. Like maybe that would be the other pick I would suggest. But offensive line is just so key to be able to have the Tennessee Titans succeed in the future. And, Brock Bowers, even though I think he is a generational level talent, I don't think he provides the value for the Titans that Joe Alt does. Because in round 2, both tight end and offensive tackles probably going to suck. So pick your poison. Both would be a great pick. I just think Joe Alt for the Titans would be the best pick. But Commanders' offensive line is a huge issue. But at the same time, Brock Bowers could be the cornerstone of your offense for the next 10 years. So it's very, very tough between J.C. Latham, who's coming off also 0 pressure game. So like he's also coming off on a hot streak. And then Brock Bowers, who, he's a legitimate generational talent. Then we got Kool-Aid McKinstry here for the Falcons. We'll see what happens with Jeff Okudah. But I'm going to be in full support of this under the condition. I'm pretty sure, based on my previous studies of Josh's mock drafts, he's not a fan of Bo Nix nor Michael Penix. So, I'm obviously going to have my counter here. I'm a big fan of Bo Nix. He is tied quarterback 2 for me. I know. Mind-blowing. Am I a quarterback guru? I would say that's probably not my area of strength. So, no. But I do really like Bo Nix. I do really like Drake May. So My point of view is this is obviously where I would take Bo Nix. But looking at it through Josh's point of view, it does make sense. If you don't want to go quarterback here, Cooley McKinstry is probably your best bang for your buck. Then we got the Packers going Leatu Latu. That doesn't seem to make much sense to me. Continuing to invest high amounts of draft capital into the edge room is fine, but when you're spending this high of a pick just after having Lucas Van Ness picked for roughly a little bit even less than this, it just doesn't add up. Like, you have so many other issues. What's going to move the needle for this team is not another edge rusher. It's not. Leatu Latu, especially in a deeper edge class, is not worth the number 9 overall pick. Now, he's a great talent, and he's continuing to be restudied by me over and over again because I do feel like my initial gut reaction is wrong. Like, I see him and I'm like, okay, well, I can see how he's going to be a star. But then you dig into the tape and there's something that bothers me. I'm going to try to trust that initial thought process, but this is a deep edge class. Deep as in you can get one round 2 where you have 2 picks. So if you think this is where you can move the needle, do it then. You don't have the offensive line for the future. You got some really solid tackles on the board in Latham and Fuaga that could totally move the needle for the squad when Bakhtiari is not in. Rasheed Walker is not the future answer. Therefore, it makes a lot more sense to go after it this spot. I know there's a lot of people who love Leatu Latu, but you have to look at supply and demand. It's simple economics. It's simple business. You get your best value. You play the value game where I can get someone who is 80% as good as Leatu Latu in round number 2. You can't get someone who's 50% as good as Talise Fuaga or JC Latham in round 2. You can't. So, therefore, it's pretty damn obvious where they should go. Nate Wiggins is the next pick. I don't know why people love Nate Wiggins so much. If I'm just going to be completely honest here, I think he is the 3rd best corner. No, I don't even think he's the 3rd best. I think he's the 5th best corner in the class. Like, this guy will straight up have like 1 or 2 big plays a game, and I love that. But the guy's allowed 50, 60, 70 yards during the game, allowed a touchdown, and nobody bats an eye. For me, I get bothered when there's a ton of positive criticism out there, like saying, or a ton of positive notes saying how great a player is. And, there's these other corners where it's like, well, they allow a lot of yards. Well, it's not an equal playing field. It's just like talking about certain players, like when it was the Bo Nix versus Michael Penix debate, saying, oh, Bo Nix is so old, but no one was talking about that for Michael Penix. Like, for me, I don't appreciate when there's a double standard. Nate Wiggins, there's a double standard. He's a good corner. I think he should be a 1st-round pick. But the amount of inequitable love that he gets when he's technically undersized at sub 190 at 6'2", when he does have quite a few times where he lets up big plays. The sentiment is definitely out of proportion for what his actual play is. And maybe it's a little bit of my arrogance, but for me, I do feel like I'm quite a solid cornerback evaluator. And I don't see the extreme love, especially for a team that needs a quarterback. You got to think about what moves the needle here. There are really good quarterbacks on the board. Again, I'm looking at it through Josh's eyes and not my own, because it's pretty obvious I'd be going to quarterback here. But the cornerback selection, if you're going to be going after one, it's between Nate and it's between Kalen King. Now, again, if you're looking for the size and speed, okay, I get it. But this team is not desperate for a corner. This class also has quite a few developmental corners who have a better height to weight ratio. And they also are going to be available in round number 2. For me, this doesn't move the needle. There's a lot of other positions that are higher value, that they're going to have bigger impact. And this team doesn't need to go after Nate Wiggins at pick 10. But we'll see. We'll see. It's not, we're not shaming the exact pick here with Josh. It's primarily just the overall sentiment. I mean, again, also, by the way, right tackle is wide open for someone to move in and be able to address it. JC Latham, Talise Fuaga there. So that's going to be my counter to the actual pick, besides the quarterback mark. But it's the idea of the inequitable love for Nate Wiggins that other players don't get. I don't get that. I seriously don't understand it. But it is what it is. I mean, people follow a media narrative all the time, and it's a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. JC Latham being their 6th overall prospect, to me, is kind of wild, but, he is a really damn good prospect, and he has improved exponentially over the past year. I got to give the kid some credit. He has done a great job polishing up. So shout out to JC Latham. This is a great pick for the Jets. Drazon Newton is a great pick for the Chargers as well. Naturally, I think that developing the defensive interior, developing both sides of the line is kind of crucial for success down the long run. And the one thing the Chargers have not really done ever is have a good defensive interior. So Drazon Newton is going to be a great catalyst for that. The Rams going Amarius Mims. I think he's going to return. I think he should return. I believe he will be a top 5, if not top 3 selection in the 2025 NFL draft, as he was in my most recent video. So spoiler alert there. But if he ends up coming out, the Rams would not be mistaken in taking him. So elite level player, great size, pretty much great everything. He's still raw and he's still productive. That's a great sign because he has the measurables and the immeasurables that I would be looking for. Jaden Daniels to the Raiders, obviously. AP was his coach there at ASU for a couple of years. Would be kind of cool to see what happens if they end up getting paired back together. The Raiders do need to have a little bit more of a spark in that QB room. You got Malik Neighbors here for the Colts. I think he did this last week too. I don't fully understand that. I like Malik Neighbors. I do. I even moved him, even though he hasn't graded out remotely close to this. I moved him into my top 32. I think he's a very role-specific player. I think he could fit a role very well in the Colts. But again, we're talking about moving the needle here. Defensive back is going to be the way you move the needle. I mean, linebacker down the long run. I know that there's some pushback on that, but, not even talking about the loss of Shaq Leonard. I do think in the long run, you should be having a true elite level linebacker, as I think every team should be striving to have an elite commander of the defense in that linebacking core or defensive interior. To be fair, there's not a good one here. Maybe if you want to move back and get T'Vondre Sweat, you got a chance there. But for me, I don't fully see the value in Malik Neighbors here at this point. We'll see what happens. And then, if Michael Pittman doesn't return, there's no reason to go after Malik Neighbors when Keon Coleman's on the board. Simply put. Tyler Nubin is the pick here for the Broncos. I could see him being in a Broncos uniform. For me, I think he's a Seattle Seahawk through and through just because I don't know why there's that intangibility of a Seattle Seahawk that I see in his game. But, I do think that they could continue to invest in the safety core. I'd prefer to go after wide receiver at this point because I do think this team is looking for some young blood and some new excitement in that receiving core. I also do think that a quarterback should be on their short list of items that they can acquire if the value is right. I would not force it because Russ still has a little bit of cooking left to do. But, if there's a guy there and the value's right, go for it. But Tyler Nubin, not a bad choice. Just for me, a lower value position. And it's a spot where they have plenty of developmental safeties. And I think that they can continue to thrive. I don't think the safety role is the reason why they're losing. But that's a conversation for another day. Keon Coleman to the Bengals, especially if T. Higgins does not return, is the best pick so far. Maybe Joe Alt might have been better. You got Cooper DeJean here. Okay, this rivals even the Keon Coleman pick, but naturally there have been a couple picks earlier that have led to these guys being on the board, so it is what it is. But Cooper DeJean being able to find his own role on the Bills is probably one of the best options that you can take because this guy will literally play almost every single position on the field, and he'll do it extremely well. JT Tuimoloau, he's not changing very much from week to week, is he? For me, I feel like I'm doing some deja vu shit here because I have seen JT Tuimoloau at this spot multiple times, and Cooper DeJean, and I think Keon Coleman. So it does feel like again, I like to change things up a little bit. Probably is why I ruffle some feathers sometimes because I know maybe one pick is a best pick, but another one is maybe 95% or maybe 90% is good, but it would, change things up and make things interesting. One thing I might realize is I'm going to start reading through these in the subsequent weeks. And if they end up being very, very similar, I'm going to stop reviewing these because, it is a little bit boring to say the same damn shit over and over again. No disrespect to CBS because I think they do a better job than companies like Fox and NBC actually is Connor Rogers. So they know what they're doing. But in this instance, at least they're not the worst. But this is just not entertaining to read the same thing over and over again. And I know it's not very entertaining for y'all too. But, it is because it's always fun to see these different scenarios, see these different players going to the different spots, and then sometimes it's a revelation where it's like, wow, I really do love Jaden Daniels on the Raiders. Like I just totally forgot about his connection to AP, and then y'all would remind me of it. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a really cool pick that I'm now going to factor in, and it adds a new variable that changes everything. I'm not seeing that here. There's a lot of the same shit. So it's very unfortunate, but I do think the Saints could upgrade at edge rusher. He fits the size and athletic profile they're looking for. It's just a little bit unfortunate that, I have seen this exact order last week. JJ McCarthy, he ended up having a pretty solid game versus Ohio State. That should have been an interception. Also, if the damn defensive back did not turn his back, JJ McCarthy threw a beautiful ball, given the fact that the defender was not paying attention to the fact he was in the passing lane. Should have been a pick. But should have been a pick with that first defender, and it should have been a pick with Denzel Burke. That aside, JJ McCarthy still, with the conditions of the game, performed very well and won again. So can't shame a guy who's beaten Ohio State 3 times. Good for him. Then we got Chop Robinson here. Once again, I'm 90% sure this is what happened last time too. I think this is a change up, so we can finally talk about something new. But Chop Robinson has unbelievable potential. This doesn't exactly fit the profile of the edge rusher I would choose for the Cardinals. For me also, I would be looking at defensive interior, but I'm actually regrading all of them. I spent until like 3 a.m. last night regrading a lot of them, but there are some change ups in the overall rankings because I also have a new set of rankings, and we'll be able to post those in the coming months. But Chop Robinson, he is a special, special talent. I'm excited to see him continue to flourish and develop in the NFL. This is going to be definitely more of a long-term play, though, because he kind of conflicts body-wise with B.J. Ojulari, who has been very, very talented. We'll talk about that in a second. But Braylon Trice, I don't feel like edge rusher is the position the Seattle Seahawks need to improve the most. Regardless of your feelings on Bo Nix and Michael Penix, I still think that even if you think they're second-round quality players, this team has such a massive need for a future quarterback, it's worth taking. So unless you think Michael Penix and Bo Nix are bona fide like day 3 players, I'm quite surprised that they're not taken. Y'all know how I feel. Talise actually came off a 0 pressure week this week, which is wonderful. Versus Oregon, I expected it to be 2 or 3 pressures, and he's going to be listed in the stock report this week, which makes me very, very happy. Somebody who I had as a generational player. He's had some slip-ups this year, but it's good to see him rebound at the end. To me, that's all that truly matters is, can you rebound? I'm so excited to see if he ends up coming out. Would not be surprised if he says, screw it, I'm going to return since DJU might return. It's going to break my heart, but it is a very real possibility, and we'll see what happens there. Kingsley Suamataia goes to the Texans. They just gave a contract, if I'm not mistaken, to their right tackle. I'm forgetting what his name is off the top of my head, but he's from UAB. But that doesn't really make much sense at all. I could see a Graham Barton because, hey, when you have George Fant come in, you could rather have someone who's been already playing on your offensive line, who knows all the positions. That'd make a little bit more sense. This doesn't. So I don't understand. You got Kalen King here for the Dolphins. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up wanting to go after this because of the fact that Kalen King's excellent value here. I didn't believe that there was another company or another person who had Kalen King, higher on their board. Because I'm at 15 and I'm like, wow, he's borderline blue chip for me. He is essentially, I could extend the blue chip category over Bo Nix and Drake May easily, and even into Emeka Buka and JC Latham. This class is loaded with first round talent to the point where I legitimately could have all of these in blue. These guys could all legitimately be blue chip players, and I wouldn't bat an eye. I wouldn't. There's some really good players here. But Kalen King, I just don't see that the Dolphins would want to go after that route when the offensive line does need to have some extra assistance. There isn't very many guys left, but guys like Jordan Morgan, who've been playing very well, could actually end up being longer-term fill-in options. Once again, he goes after Emeka Buka. I just don't. Emeka Buka is not such an amazing pick for the Cowboys that you shouldn't change it, which is another reason why I'm slightly getting ticked off. It's like when you got Jordan Morgan on the board and on a team that could probably use a left tackle, like at least toss that in there to make a change because you know the Niners would probably take him. They wouldn't probably take Emeka Ibuka, so at least you're not fueling one of your main rivals. But Emeka Ibuka is a great player. If you end up like keeping him for the long run, this is a more of a long-term play. You would have to kick him fully to the outside, but it is what it is. Jordan Morgan would be a great pick for the Niners. I think he's more of like an early third round talent, but overall he's been able to play very, very well in a very weak tackle class. I wouldn't shame a team for taking him late one. Then you got Jack Sawyer here for the Jaguars. I don't know about, apart from the run defense part of Jack Sawyer's game, what would ever qualify him to be a first round pick. He's not that athletically talented. I don't really think so. He doesn't have the biggest frame on planet Earth to kick inside, so I would also disagree with the versatility. He also has a very, very poor processor that is developing, but it's still a poor processor. He has a very hard time knowing where the ball is, and that has not changed. The more I watch him, the more I really see that this guy does his assignment. That's pretty much it. He does have a very hard time finding where the ball is. And that's not an issue for someone who can be a designated pass rusher or, bring him in on rundowns to stuff certain holes. That makes perfect sense. But when you're drafting someone in the first round to compete with Josh Allen and Travon Walker, who are both top 10 selections, those guys had versatility. Those guys were very smart. It doesn't make sense. You're not going to be having a value add. This doesn't move the needle the way that Rome Odunze, who just goes to your competitor, would have been. That's what I just don't understand. You got to think about the implications of your pick as well as who you're giving to your opponents. And Kansas City gets the best possible pick because I traded up for Rome Odunze in my past mock draft as well. I think that's an excellent selection for KC and a massive need. Then you got Graham Barton to the Lions. He's going to end up sticking in at right guard. Looking at the interior offensive line class, I even regretted taking my number, 12 overall player in the class. I picked 30 to y'all. So, for me, I am starting to believe that you can wait on interior offensive line. Graham Barton's not the best value. You can go after wide receiver here. You can go after corner here. You can go after an interior defensive lineman or an edge rusher at this point. Did Jared Verse go? There's no way. I'm going to spoil the last two picks. Did Jared Verse go? I don't remember ever even talking about Jared Verse. Holy Toledo, he didn't go. What? Did I just skip over him way earlier? I'm tripping. Am I tripping? Jared Verse is still on the board. What? We had Jack Sawyer go over Jared Verse? Oh, and I was just giving credit at the start of the video to Josh. Jared Verse, we're going to take Jack Sawyer. We're going to take, Kingsley Suamataia. We're going to take these guys, Graham Barton, over Jared Verse. Some serious questions right there. Some serious questions. And that's not changing it up a little bit. Unless Jared Verse legitimately has some major health concerns, this dude's going top 20. No doubt in my mind. He should go above Leatu Latu. But that's a conversation for another day. Denzel Burke's a very good pick for the Ravens. I have him at number 20 on my board. So the value matches up, the position and need match up as well. And then Troy Fautanu, this is a developmental pick for the Eagles. I don't think, again, with Jared Verse on the board, it's absolutely ludicrous to not select him here at this point. But I do think there's even other pass rushers that are available that are going to be more of a day one impact than Troy. I'm not going to fully shame it if that is the selection. He has unbelievable movement skills for an offensive lineman. And, I do think he should end up being a guard. But if you want to train him in the long run to be a tackle, be my guest. Overall, I actually thought this mock draft was kind of uninspiring, which sucks because I really like supporting Josh. And I know that he can bounce back from this, but, critical feedback's always key in this industry. So, just like y'all give me some pretty harsh feedback and, I take it on the chin because sometimes I make a stupid pick. It happens. This just felt a little too out of the ordinary. So I'm really curious to see why, like with the thought selection in there, but thank you so much for watching. And enjoying this with me. Thank you so much for supporting anyway. See you on the far side. Peace.